Favirist CONCTECTTEN Scions. The vast observation deck of the celestial harmony hummed with the nervous energy of 24 alien diplomats. Beyond the curved, transparent panels, Earth hung like a blue-green jewel against the velvet backdrop of space. Commander Alexis Hayes stood at parade rest, her polished boots planted firmly on the deck, hands clasped behind her back. Unlike the others in the human delegation who wore formal diplomatic attire, Hayes remained in her dress blues, medals and campaign ribbons precisely aligned on her chest. Is it truly necessary to include a military representative in a diplomatic mission? The question came from Ambassador Verlax, a towering insectoid whose chitinous exoskeleton gleamed under the ambient lighting. 4 compound eyes studied Hayes with unmistakable suspicion. Dr. Elaine Chen, Earth's chief diplomat, smiled politely. Commander Hayes serves as our security liaison, Ambassador. Her role is advisory and protective, not aggressive. Humans and their weapons, another delegate muttered, translators barely catching the words. Always preparing for conflict. Hayes remained impassive, though she noted every reaction, every shifting posture among the alien representatives. 6 months of intensive training in xenobiology and diplomatic protocol had prepared her for this moment. Humanity's formal introduction to the Galactic Concordat, an alliance of 27 spacefaring civilizations. What training hadn't prepared her for was the undisguised wariness with which most species regarded humans. "The Council will see you now," announced a small amphibious aide, skin glistening with bioluminescent patterns. "Please follow protocol. No sudden movements." Hayes caught Dr. Chen's eye and nodded slightly. They had rehearsed this moment dozens of times. First impressions mattered, especially when most of the galaxy viewed your species as dangerously unpredictable primates who had somehow stumbled into faster-than-light travel. The grand chamber of the Concordat stretched before them, a vast hemispherical space with concentric rings of seating rising around a central platform. Representatives from across the galaxy filled the chamber, some humanoid, others utterly alien in form. Atmospheric fields created invisible boundaries where different breathing mixtures met without contamination. "The delegation from Earth," announced the chamber herald, voice amplified throughout the space. Dr. Chen stepped forward, delivering the prepared greeting in flawless galactic standard. Hayes scanned the chamber methodically, assessing potential threats, a habit from 15 years of Marine service that she couldn't shake even here. The Council Overseer, a willowy being with silvery skin and eyes like liquid mercury, acknowledged the greeting. "We welcome Earth's representatives to the Concordat Station. Your journey from isolation to this moment has been unusually rapid." Hayes detected the subtle emphasis. Earth had developed from early radio signals to functional FTL travel in just under a century, a developmental pace that apparently alarmed the established species of the Concordat. "We are eager to learn and contribute," Dr. Chen replied diplomatically. "Yes," the Overseer continued, "and we are equally eager to understand humans better. Your species presents certain concerns." A holographic display activated in the center of the chamber, showing historical footage from Earth, wars, weapons testing, environmental damage. Hayes recognized the intent immediately, a public dressing down disguised as orientation. "Your technological advancement has outpaced your cultural maturity," stated a bulbous delegate from the upper tier. "Humans develop weapons before developing wisdom." Hayes remained at attention, face neutral despite the growing discomfort among her diplomatic colleagues. The criticism continued for nearly 20 minutes, a cataloging of human failings presented as reasoned concern. Finally, Dr. Chen was invited to respond. She had just opened her mouth when the chamber's lighting flickered, plunging briefly into darkness before emergency systems engage. "Containment breach in Sector 7, announced an automated voice. "Emergency protocols activated." The chamber erupted in confusion as delegates rose, some panicking, others demanding information. Hayes noted that despite the sophisticated technology surrounding them, The Concordette's emergency response seemed chaotic and uncoordinated. "What's in Sector 7?" Hayes asked, stepping closer to a flustered aide. "Life support systems," the aide replied, fingers dancing across a control panel. "Primary atmospheric processors. If they fail completely, the station's air supply becomes compromised." Hayes finished, already assessing the situation. "What's the containment protocol?" "Standard procedure is station-wide lockdown until automated systems resolve the issue." Hayes frowned. "And if they don't?" The aide's silence was answer enough. "Dr. Chen," Hayes said, turning to the diplomat, "request permission to offer assistance." Chen understood immediately. "Overseer," she called out, "our security liaison has extensive training in emergency response. May she assist your team?" The overseer looked startled. "This is not a combat situation, human." "No," Hayes agreed, stepping forward, "but it is a crisis requiring immediate action. Your automated systems are struggling, and your staff appears overwhelmed." For a moment, Hayes thought they would refuse. Then the station shuddered slightly, and warning indicators shifted from amber to red. "Very well," the overseer conceded, "but you will follow the direction of our security chief." The security chief, a massive reptilian being with armored skin and eyes like burning coals, snorted derisively. "What can a human offer that our systems cannot?" "A different perspective," Hayes replied evenly. "Sometimes that's all you need." Minutes later, Hayes found herself in the station's command center, studying environmental schematics alongside bemused alien technicians. The situation was deteriorating rapidly. The primary atmospheric processors had suffered an unexpected system failure, and backup systems were unable to compensate. "Your emergency protocols are too rigid," Hayes observed after studying the response pattern. "You're trying the same approach repeatedly despite diminishing returns. The protocols are thoroughly tested," the security chief insisted. "They will eventually resolve the issue." "Not before air quality reaches critical levels in the residential sectors," Hayes countered, pointing to projection data. "You need adaptive response, not just iterative attempts." The security chief's scales rippled in what Hayes had learned was an expression of irritation. "And what would you suggest, human?" Hayes studied the schematics again. "Your systems are designed to self-protect first, then restore function. That's backward in this situation. You need to manually override the safeties and force a system reset. That would risk damage to the processors themselves." "Yes," Hayes agreed calmly, "but it would restore immediate function. Equipment can be repaired. Lives cannot be replaced." The security chief stared at her for a long moment. Humans would risk valuable technology so readily. When lives are at stake, without hesitation. After a tense discussion with the station's engineering team, Hayes's suggestion was implemented. The manual override required physical intervention. Someone had to access the processor core and execute the reset sequence in person. "I'll go," Hayes volunteered immediately. "The environment is hostile," objected one of the technicians. "Temperatures approaching 40 degrees Celsius. Toxic gas buildup." Hayes was already removing her formal jacket. "I've operated in worse conditions. Just tell me exactly what I need to do." The security chief studied her with new interest. "You would risk your life for a station of aliens who have shown you nothing but suspicion." "I'm not doing it for your approval," Hayes replied, checking the environmental suit they provided. "I'm doing it because it's necessary." The reset procedure required navigating through 3 chambers of increasing environmental hostility before reaching the central processor core. Hayes moved with deliberate efficiency, following the technical instructions relayed through her helmet comm while adapting to the unfamiliar technology. When she reached the core, emergency lighting bathed everything in an eerie red glow. Warning indicators showed atmospheric toxicity at dangerous levels. The main console displayed incomprehensible alien script, but Hayes had memorized the sequence of inputs required. "Beginning manual override," she reported, fingers moving across the alien interface. console is responding. The reset sequence initiated, but as the system began its restart, Hayes noticed something odd. A pattern of energy fluctuations that shouldn't have been present in a simple malfunction. This wasn't an accident, she realized suddenly. The system was deliberately sabotage. As the processors roared back to life, Hayes documented the evidence of tampering before making her way back through the hazardous chambers. By the time she returned to the command center, environmental systems were stabilizing throughout the station. The security chief met her at the airlock, expression unreadable. The processors are functioning at 90% capacity. Your unconventional approach appears to have been successful. Hayes removed her helmet, wiping sweat from her brow. The system failure wasn't an accident. Someone deliberately compromised the atmospheric processors. She presented the evidence, specific pattern disruptions in the system logs that indicated external tampering rather than mechanical failure. The security chief's eyes widened as he reviewed the data. "This is concerning," he admitted. "Our systems should have detected such tampering." "Your systems were looking for known attack patterns," Hayes explained. "This was designed to mimic natural failure." Word of the sabotage and Hayes's role in resolving the crisis spread quickly through the station. When the human delegation returned to the council chamber hours later, the atmosphere had shifted noticeably. "The council acknowledges Earth's assistance during our recent difficulty," the overseer stated formally. Commander Hayes displayed resourcefulness and courage worthy of recognition. Hayes stood at attention, uncomfortable with the attention. "Any of my colleagues would have done the same, Overseer." "Perhaps," the Overseer conceded, "but it was you who acted. More significantly, you identified a security vulnerability our systems missed." Ambassador Verlac stepped forward, compound eyes fixed on Hayes. "I must admit my assessment of humans may have been incomplete. Your willingness to risk yourself for others, even those who showed you suspicion, this is not the action of an immature species." "Humans are complicated," Hayes replied simply. "We're capable of both great violence and great compassion. We're still learning which path to choose." The Overseer's silvery eyes studied her intently. "Perhaps there is wisdom in that awareness. However, questions remain about humanity's readiness to join the Concordat." A new voice spoke from the upper tier, one of the elder representatives who had remained silent until now. "I propose a formal evaluation. If humans wish to join our community, they should demonstrate their worth through the traditional trials." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Hayes glanced at Dr. Chen, whose expression revealed nothing but whose slight nod conveyed volumes. "What would these trials entail?" Hayes asked. The elder's face split in what might have been a smile. "3 challenges to prove your species' readiness. 1 of body, 1 of mind, and 1 of spirit. Pass these trials, and Earth's petition will be given serious consideration." "And if we fail?" Dr. Chen inquired. "Then you return to Earth with observer status only. No voting rights, no resource access, no protection guarantees." The human delegation exchanged glances. This was far more than they had expected from this initial meeting. "We accept these terms," Dr. Chen declared after a brief consultation. The Overseer nodded solemnly. "The trials will commence tomorrow. Commander Hayes, as the human who has already demonstrated capability, you will lead your species' representation." As the chamber emptied, Hayes felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. Humanity's future among the stars would depend on what happened next. "They're testing us," Dr. Chen murmured as they returned to their assigned quarters. "This isn't standard protocol. They are specifically challenging us because they fear what we might become." Hayes nodded thoughtfully. "They see our potential for violence, and it terrifies them. Can you blame them? Look at our history." "No," Hayes admitted, "but they're missing something important about humans." "What's that?" Hayes gazed out at the stars, thinking of the long journey that had brought humanity to this moment. "Our capacity for violence exists alongside our capacity for growth. We learn from our mistakes faster than any species I've seen here. She turned to face the diplomat. And that adaptability might be exactly what gets us through these trials. As night cycle fell across the station, Commander Hayes prepared mentally for the challenges ahead, knowing that humanity's place among the stars hung in the balance. The trial of Worth. Dawn cycle aboard the Concordat station brought with it a tense anticipation. Commander Alexis Hayes stood in the preparation chamber, surrounded by her small team. Dr. Chen, 2 scientists, and a cultural liaison. They had been permitted 5 representatives for the trials ahead. Any insights into what we're facing? Hayes asked Dr. Abernathy, their xenoanthropologist. The older man stroked his beard thoughtfully. The trials of Worth are deeply rooted in Concordat tradition. From what I've pieced together, they're designed to test a species' fundamental attributes: physical capability, intellectual reasoning, and ethical judgment. They're designed for us to fail, Dr. Chen added quietly. The parameters will almost certainly favor physiologies and thought patterns different from our own. Hayes nodded, unsurprised. Then we adapt. That's what humans do best. A soft chime announced the arrival of their escort, the same reptilian security chief who had worked with Hayes during yesterday's crisis. His scaled face remained impassive, but Hayes detected a subtle difference in his posture, less dismissive, more assessing. "The council awaits," he announced. "Follow me to the Chamber of Trials." They were led through sections of the station Hayes hadn't seen before, corridors that curved in mathematically perfect arcs, lined with materials that seemed to shift subtly as they passed. The architecture itself felt alien, designed to remind visitors they were outsiders. The Chamber of Trials proved to be a vast arena-like space, with observation galleries rising in tiers around a central floor that appeared capable of reconfiguration. Most of the Concordat delegations were already present, watching from the galleries with undisguised curiosity. The overseer stood on a floating platform at the chamber center. "Approach, representatives of Earth." Hayes led her team forward, maintaining a dignified pace despite the scrutiny from thousands of alien eyes. "The trials of Worth are an ancient tradition," the overseer intoned. "They have evaluated 17 species before yours. Some succeeded, many failed. Are you prepared to submit to this evaluation?" "We are," Hayes replied firmly. "Then let the first trial commence." The chamber floor shifted, restructuring itself into what Hayes recognized as an obstacle course, but one designed with alien physiologies in mind: pools of unknown liquid, gravity-shifting zones, and climbs that would challenge beings with vastly different body structures than humans. "The trial of body tests physical adaptation," explained the overseer. "Complete the course within the allowed time. 2 representatives may attempt." Hayes studied the course, immediately spotting the challenges it presented for human physiology. "Dr. Lai, you're with me," she said, selecting their environmental systems specialist whose slender frame and rock climbing experience might prove valuable. They were given lightweight environmental suits for protection from elements your biology may find hostile, explained an aide, and positioned at the starting point. "Observe carefully," Hayes murmured to Dr. Lai. "Don't assume anything works the way it would on Earth." The signal came, and they began. The first obstacles proved manageable, terrain challenges that tested agility and balance. Hayes moved with the efficient economy of motion drilled into her through years of training, while Dr. Lai followed closely, mimicking her techniques. Then came the liquid pool, a shimmering substance that rippled in patterns suggesting complexity beyond simple fluid dynamics. "Analysis?" Hayes asked, pausing at the edge. Dr. Lai ran a quick scan with the limited tools they'd been permitted. "Non-toxic to our physiology, but unusual properties. Density increases with movement. The faster you go, the more resistance it creates." Hayes nodded. "So we move slowly, deliberately." They entered the pool, advancing with exaggerated slowness that drew murmurs from the observers. Where other species might have relied on brute force or specialized adaptations, the humans progressed through careful observation and adjustment. The gravity zones proved more challenging, patches where gravity suddenly shifted direction or intensity without warning. Hayes took a brutal fall when one section unexpectedly inverted, sending her crashing into what had suddenly become a ceiling. "Commander," Dr. Lai called in alarm. Hayes pulled herself up, ignoring the stabbing pain in her shoulder. "Keep going. Adapt to the pattern." Working together, they identified the subtle visual cues that preceded gravity shifts, a faint discoloration in the flooring, barely perceptible but consistent. With this knowledge, they navigated the remaining zones with increasing confidence. The final obstacle was a climbing wall that periodically reconfigured itself, handholds disappearing and reappearing in unpredictable patterns. Here, Dr. Lei's expertise proved invaluable. She quickly identified an algorithm in the changes. "It's not random," she called to Hayes. "There's a pattern. Count 7 shifts, then move." They reached the summit platform with only seconds to spare, breathing hard but successful. The observation galleries had fallen silent, many delegates leaning forward in evident surprise. "The first trial is complete," announced the overseer, voice betraying no emotion. "Earth has demonstrated physical adaptability despite biological limitations." Hayes helped Dr. Lai to her feet, both of them exhausted but satisfied. One trial down. "The trial of mind will commence after a brief recovery period," the overseer continued. "Prepare yourselves." During the intermission, their team huddled together in a small preparation room. "They're watching us carefully," Dr. Chen observed. "Not just our performance, but how we work together." Hayes nodded, applying a medical patch to her bruised shoulder. The physical trial was straightforward enough. "I'm more concerned about what comes next." When they returned to the chamber, the configuration had changed again. Now a complex holographic display dominated the center, showing what appeared to be a star system with numerous celestial bodies in motion. "The trial of mind tests problem-solving and cognitive flexibility," explained the overseer. "You must prevent a planetary catastrophe through resource allocation and intervention planning. 2 representatives may attempt." This time, Hayes stepped back. "Dr. Abernathy, Dr. Chen, this one's yours." The scenario presented was fiendishly complex, a star system with 12 planets facing cascading climate disasters. Resources were limited, and interventions on one planet affected conditions on others through intricate gravitational and atmospheric relationships. From the gallery, Hayes watched her colleagues work. They started slowly, methodically mapping the system's interrelationships before attempting any solutions. This approach drew visible impatience from some observers, who clearly expected immediate action. "They're establishing a baseline model," Hayes explained to the security chief, who had taken position nearby. "Humans prefer to understand systems before interfering with them." "Interesting," the reptilian replied. "Most species begin with immediate crisis response." As the simulation progressed, a pattern emerged in the human approach. Rather than addressing each planetary crisis in isolation, Abernathy and Chen developed a holistic strategy, sometimes allowing smaller problems to persist in service of overall system stability. "Controversial," commented the security chief when they deliberately redirected resources away from a populated planet. "This will result in significant population displacement, but prevents total ecosystem collapse on 3 other worlds," Hayes pointed out. "They're making tough decisions for long-term sustainability." When the simulation ended, the system had stabilized, though not without costs. Several planetary populations had been displaced, one moon sacrificed entirely, but the civilization as a whole had survived and retained technological capability. The council chambers erupted in intense discussion, delegates conferring in dozens of languages as they assessed the human approach. "Unconventional methodology," the overseer finally announced. "The trial of mind is complete. Earth has demonstrated cognitive adaptability, though your prioritization metrics differ significantly from Concordat standards." Hayes caught Dr. Chen's eye across the chamber. They'd passed, but clearly their approach had unsettled some delegates. The human willingness to make calculated sacrifices for long-term gain had not gone unnoticed. The final trial will commence shortly, the overseer continued. The trial of spirit will test your species' fundamental values. During the next intermission, tension hung heavily over the human team. They're watching us like we're unexploded ordnance, Dr. Lai whispered. Did we do something wrong? Not wrong, Hayes replied thoughtfully. Just different. Our approach to problem solving doesn't align with their expectations. Is that good or bad? Hayes shrugged. Depends if they're looking for diversity of thought or conformity. When they returned, the chamber had transformed once more. Now it contained what appeared to be a simple meeting room with a table and chairs, some designed for human physiology, others for various alien forms. The trial of spirit requires all representatives, announced the overseer. You will participate in a negotiation scenario with representatives of 3 concordat species. The outcome will reveal your true values. 5 delegates joined them at the table, a trio of methane-breathing Krylari with their distinctive crystalline exoskeletons, 2 serpentine vis whose coiled bodies draped elegantly over specialized perches, and the security chief himself, representing the Taraxian Dominion. The scenario presented involved a disputed resource-rich asteroid field claimed by all 3 alien species, with humans as newly arrived 4th claimants. Each species had distinctive needs and historical grievances with the others. The negotiation would determine resource allocation and governance. Begin, instructed the overseer, retreating to the observation gallery. What followed was a masterclass in diplomacy, with Dr. Chen leading the human delegation through careful, respectful engagement with each species' concerns. Hayes focused on security arrangements, proposing joint patrols and transparent monitoring systems that acknowledged historical tensions without assigning blame. Krylari delegates' positions, small contradictions that suggested they weren't what they appeared to be. She passed a note to Dr. Chen, who seamlessly adjusted her approach, asking carefully crafted questions designed to test her suspicions. The Krylari responses confirmed Hayes' instinct. These weren't actual Krylari diplomats, but actors playing roles, and not particularly well. The revelation struck her suddenly. This isn't a negotiation exercise, she whispered to her team during a brief recess. It's a loyalty test. They're seeing if we'll form alliances against others or maintain ethical consistency. With this understanding, the human team shifted strategy, focusing on principled solutions rather than strategic advantages, even when opportunities arose to gain concessions at others' expense. As the exercise concluded, something unprecedented occurred. An emergency alert blared through the chamber. Containment breach in primary research sector, announced the station's automated system. Hazardous materials detected. Emergency protocols activated. The security chief received information through his communication implant, scales darkening with alarm. This is not part of the trial, he announced. The station's quantum research laboratory has suffered a catastrophic containment failure. The overseer's voice cut through the growing panic. All trials suspended. Security teams respond immediately. Hayes stepped forward. With respect, overseer, we can help. What's the situation? After a moment's hesitation, the overseer authorized Hayes and her team to join the emergency response. They rushed to the affected sector, where chaos reigned. A research experiment involving quantum field manipulation had destabilized, creating expanding pockets of altered physical laws that threatened the station's structural integrity. The containment fields are failing, explained a frantic researcher, 6 limbs moving in agitated patterns. Regular matter becomes unpredictable when it contacts the quantum distortion. Hayes studied the emergency schematics, noting the progression of the quantum anomaly. You're trying to contain it with conventional energy barriers, but it's not working because the quantum distortion changes the rules. Precisely. We cannot establish stable containment parameters. Hayes turned to Dr. Lai. We need to think differently. Not stronger barriers, but adaptive ones. Dr. Lei's eyes widened with sudden inspiration. Like noise-canceling technology, we don't block the distortion, we generate an inverse pattern. Can your systems be reprogrammed to create quantum interference patterns? Hayes asked the station's chief engineer. Theoretically, yes, but the calculations would be. Dr. Abernethy can handle the mathematics. Hayes interrupted. Dr. Lai will help implement. We need to move quickly. What followed was a frantic race against time, with the human team working alongside alien technicians to reconfigure the station's defensive systems. Dr. Abernethy, a brilliant mathematician before becoming an anthropologist, developed the algorithmic approach while Dr. Lai translated it into the station's computational systems. Hayes focused on evacuation procedures, organizing station personnel with military efficiency to minimize casualties if their plan failed. As the quantum distortion reached critical expansion, the modified containment system engaged, projecting not a barrier but a counterbalancing field that neutralized the anomalous effects through precisely calculated interference patterns. For several tense moments, readings fluctuated wildly. Then, gradually, the distortion began to recede, collapsing back toward its origin point until it finally winked out of existence. Silence fell over the control center, broken only by the soft hum of equipment and the hissing breath of exhausted personnel. It worked, the chief engineer finally stated, amazement evident in his multifaceted voice. The station is saved. When they returned to the council chamber hours later, the atmosphere had transformed completely. The overseer awaited them, along with the full Concordat leadership. Representatives of Earth, the overseer began formally. What began as your trial of worth concluded with an unexpected but far more revealing test. You were brought here for evaluation, yet when crisis emerged, you set aside competition to offer assistance without hesitation. The elder who had originally proposed the trial stepped forward. Your approach to the quantum distortion revealed something our tests could not: the true character of humanity when faced with catastrophe. Not conquest, not advantage-seeking, but problem-solving and protection of all life. We simply did what was necessary, Hayes replied. Any of our people would have done the same. Perhaps, the elder acknowledged, but it is precisely this combination of traits that makes your species notable. You possess the strategic thinking of conquerors, but temper it with ethical constraints. You have the inventiveness of theorists, but apply it practically. You maintain military capability while genuinely pursuing peaceful cooperation. The overseer raised a hand, commanding attention. The council has reached a decision. Earth has not merely passed the trials of worth. You have demonstrated qualities the Concordat itself would benefit from cultivating. We extend formal recognition of Earth as a probationary member, with full membership to be granted after a standard observation cycle. Murmurs, mostly approving, spread through the assembled delegates. Ambassador Verlac stepped forward, compound eyes fixed on Hayes. I was among those most concerned about human inclusion, the insectoid diplomat admitted. Your species' rapid development and martial history suggested potential instability. I see now that I failed to recognize how these very qualities, properly channeled, create remarkable adaptability. The security chief approached, offering what Hayes had learned was the Tyraxian gesture of professional respect, right hand pressed flat against the chest. Your actions during both crises demonstrated something I had not expected from humans. What's that? Hayes asked. Balance, the reptilian replied simply. Between strength and restraint, between innovation and caution. It is uncommon. As the formal proceedings concluded and the human delegation prepared to return to Earth with news of their diplomatic success, Dr. Chen found Hayes on the observation deck, gazing once more at their home planet. They feared us because they didn't understand us, Chen remarked. Hayes nodded. They saw our capacity for violence without recognizing why it evolved. Our need to protect what we value. Just as they saw our technological leaps without recognizing they came from our need to solve problems. So what convinced them we weren't too dangerous to include? Hayes considered this for a moment. I think they finally understood that humanity's greatest strength isn't our capability for destruction or even our intelligence. It's our adaptability, our ability to face the unknown and find a way forward. Chen smiled slightly. That and having a Marine who knows when to fight and when to think. Hayes shrugged, uncomfortable with the personal recognition. I'm just one example. The real story of humanity isn't our past conflicts or individual heroes. It's our collective journey from where we began to where we're going. As the celestial harmony prepared for departure, carrying news that would forever change humanity's place in the cosmos, Commander Alexis Hayes took one last look at the vast Concordat station. The aliens had dreaded human soldiers, fearing what they might become. Instead, they'd met a Marine who showed them what humanity truly was, not perfect, not peaceful by nature, but striving always to be better than they had been before. And that, Hayes reflected as Earth grew larger in the viewport, was worth more than any trial or test could measure. The human spirit that faced the universe not with fear or arrogance, but with determined hope and endless curiosity.